What's up, internet? I'm Real Phils. Um, given that the Tekken 8 season 3 patch is supposed to come out in like 3 days of time recording in March 14th. I just wanted to film a video talking about the differences between Tekken and VF and why the only solution to fix Tekken is to restore movement to the level that it used to be at. Like I'm talking about like a Tekken 6 level minimum. I wanted to compare the game to VF to just explain why Tekken needs movement because VF is consistent, Tekken isn't. Tekken has never been consistent. Regardless of what Tekken game you play, the actual system mechanics and basically every Tekken game are not necessarily intentionally designed to work XYZ way if we're talking about the movement mechanics versus VF. The offense and defense isn't intentional in that game. All these other things, it's just things that evolve to be the way that they are, right? So look, I have three main examples on a systems level that I want to show, just to make this easy. So, number one, and I'm going to be calling these points of rigidity because that's essentially what they are. They are rocks that a dev team can consistently return to and consistently evaluate due to how intentionally designed or unintentionally designed the system mechanics are in the game. So, we have Virtual Fighter right here, right? So look, I want to show you something. So, number one, if I go here, now the VF system is the side steps are binary. So what does that mean? What that means is that as long as you are in minus frames, right? And that's one thing with this system is that the sidestep only really works consistently at minus frames. There's situations where you can be lightly plus depending on the move they did, you can sidestep, but that's not really something that you will be doing a lot compared to sidestepping in minus. So sidestepping in minus, like say for example that you hit something like this. So you hit your 6P. So Tekken has one jab and down 4-1. VF has 5P, which is neutral jab, and 6P. So that's your main. That's two of your main highs and mids. That's like your fastest highs and mids in this game, right? Besides throws are 10 frames, so throws are faster than strikes. But if you are in a throw animation at all, if their strike is even active, like the strike startup is even active for 1 frame, then the strike will beat out the throw, right? So throws are only guaranteed realistically as like a punish or certain like counter hit situations or other things, right? So look, it is a throw attempt. You can still break the throw, but that's whatever. So look, so the side steps in this game are binary. Why does this matter? You might be going like, oh, that doesn't matter. Like I don't understand what that has to do with Tekken's inability to design the game and why Tekken needs movement. I'm gonna explain. Don't worry, I'm gonna explain, but I want to show you something first. Now look, if I pick Lao right here, let's say that I do this. Now I have all these different Lao options recorded. So look, do you see this? It's hard to do though, but so what I'm doing right here is it's called ECD, well ECDC, but because the sidestep system is binary, what we can do is, if the Lao was just doing these things immediately, we just tap our sidestep, right? We tap our sidestep. If the step is successful, we get the sidestep, regardless of anything else. So if the step is successful, we get the sidestep. But what we actually do is, if we want to do this counterplay, right, we just tap down and then we input 3-3G. So what does this do? Now there's two different types of this though. There's EDC, which is evade dash cancel, and it's faster than ECDC. And then there's ECDC, which is evade crouch dash cancel, which is what I was doing to deal with Lao's stance right there. So listen. Now, what does this have to do with rigidity and all that other stuff I was talking about? Well, think about this for a second, because there's a few things that I also have to explain with this. So let's look at this first. So look. Now, one thing you might be asking is, well, if you can just ECDC basically all them stance options right there like you were doing, what is the actual mix up with the stance? I'm gonna show you. Now look. This 6 PP by itself is -1 on hit. So watch this. So if I do this, I don't have the time. I don't have the time. Why do I not have the time? Because when you do a sidestep, and a VF head might, watch this video, and maybe this is the slightest bit inaccurate. But when you do a sidestep in this game, regardless of the situation, you are vulnerable for at least 12 frames. You're vulnerable for at least 12 frames. So remember that throws are 10 frames. Because I believe I mentioned already, throws are 10 frames in this game. They're faster than strikes. If I get hit by Lao doing this 6 PP, and let's say I do that, well, okay. Now I can break the throw. I can break the throw, of course. I can input my EDC or my ECDC and then break the throw. But the mix-up is that the throw is a punish if he doesn't go in the stance. If he goes in the stance, then I can ECDC it, right? I can evade crouch dash. I can evade crouch dash cancel. But look, here's the issue. And this is one point of rigidity that makes this game way more easy to balance than a game like Tekken, and this is why Tekken needs movement. This system is designed with exactly this situation in mind. The dev team is very aware this game is extremely intentionally designed, and the fact that the sidestep has such restrictions compared to a game like Tekken is what makes this game so well balanced. Even if you don't like Virtua Fighter, most people will tell you this is one of the most balanced fighting games of all time, and it's a very it is true to the system. Almost anything that happens in this game is easily explainable, or it's explainable with a little more research. Simply because everything is very well defined. But we know that the sidestep only works in minus. So we covered that. We know that throws are 10 frames. So basically, the counterplay to the sidestep and the counterplay to moves that are linear are very intentionally designed. And they serve as a point of rigidity because you know for a fact that it's going to be consistent. That is an issue that Tekken, that's a serious issue with Tekken that I'm going to show you in T8 is why the game cannot be fixed except by fixing the movement, right? So look, that's number one. So the first point is that in VF, the sidestep is going to be completely consistent. If the move is linear, then you're going to get the hell out the way. Now, if it's a string that's linear, if you press a button, it can retrack you. There's a few things that can happen like that. You can sidestep something, and then it has 2 hits. For example, Kage has a flip that's like +1 on block. But if you press too early after it does, and you don't actually confirm the whiff, you can get hit. That's just one, the sidestep is consistent. That's the main point. Now let me show you the second point. Now I want you to look at this. Right? So look. I have Jackie selected, right? So watch this. If I go to guard counter attack 2, now look at this. I do 6P. Wait a minute. So I do 6P blocks. I backdash. Look. I backdash, and I get a recovery counter hit. So he would get launched from that, right? But let me show you this. Now, let me record this situation. So let me do this. So, so if I do this, if for some reason I backdash and they do a sidekick, so say that they read this backdash, as long as the sidekick touches me, I get knocked down into a state that they can launch me from. That's a change that they made in VF5 Revo, which is basically like this updated re-release version with the balance patches and stuff. They made it so that if you do a sidekick or whatever, that it'll knock them down like that and they can get a launcher. Now, I know what you're thinking. What does this have to do with Tekken? Well, look, the backdash is also restricted. The backdash is strong, but it's not strong in a vacuum. It's not something that you can just do to fix your situation. You can't just spam this all day because there's actually risks attached with it. The backdash itself is counter hit state. So you can actually, like, if you try and backdash a situation, let's say that they press this button right here, then you could be launched for that. If they did, like, let's say that they did dash into it or whatever, you could be launched for that because it's counter hit state. So this is another point of rigidity. The backdash is not a catch-all answer to deal with your problems. And it was never that way in Tekken, but it was an integral part of managing the risk that you had to take on and a bunch of other things. So one of the things that Jackie players would do is they do 6P. This follow-up is a high, so they'll try and 2P it. And then the mind game is, well, you know, do they backdash? Do they do X? Do they actually finish it? And you get a 2P. A 2P is pretty good. Like, it gives you good frames. It's probably the strongest button in the game from a fundamental context. However, the you can always, like, get hit by this and then you get launched. That's a good amount of damage. You know, they get a good situation off of it. They get a few different things. And Jackie also has this button, which you can see is -2, which means he can evade after. But if you try and press, then this will hit you, because if I remember correctly, this is an EX high. Wait a minute, let me put the display on. No, it's a regular high. My bad. But I believe that if you try and press 2P after, that it does like stop you from doing it. Wait, let me see. Yeah, so like if the first hit hits, I don't believe you have like necessarily the frames to do the 2P. I think it locks you into that. And even then, if you get counter hit by it, now I could be wrong on that, but he can also do something like this. You might not see this that often, but it's just a fact that it exists. And this is plus. If you get hit by this, God help you, to be honest. Like that, you're going to take a lot of damage. But so the backdash is more restricted. It's a more intentional tool. Now remember, the sidestep is a point of rigidity where you know it's going to be consistent. And then the backdash is also a point of rigidity where you know the backdash is going to be consistent, but it's consistent in specific situations where you have to actually know the situation. It isn't like viable to just get on this game necessarily and just go like, yeah, I'm gonna just try and backdash out of literally everything that happens. So that's another point of it. Now, what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna switch to Lao for this next thing, just to show you how this works. This is another thing that's intentionally designed with this game that Tekken is not intentionally designed. Tekken, a lot of things are emergent design where they just happen to happen, if that makes sense. So let me do this. Now, if you know anything about VF, you know that one of the main defensive options is this fuzzy guard. So as you can see, I'm -4. I'm not getting hit by them things. Even at -5, if I do this, and you see I got the ring out or whatever, but even at -5. Now, let's do something real quick though. This is -8. Look at this. This is -8. So I can attempt to fuzzy against the thing, right? But look. So at -6, I can fuzzy this this strike, right? But look, the throw catches me. Why does the throw catch me? Now listen to this. I have this 6P, which is -4, and I have a 4-6P that's -5. So let me do this, because with the CPU settings or whatever. Now you notice at -8, I can also fuzzy this strike or whatever. It's difficult though. Now, when you do, now VF Head might need to correct this as well, but I'm just giving my understanding of the situation just so I can explain the issues with Tekken later. So look, when you are -5 or better, and in the case of 2G, because you can also fuzzy with 2G, I believe for 2G it's -2, so you can't use 2G to fuzzy after like -2. So if you're more than -2, you can't use it to fuzzy. You have to use 3-3. You have to use 3-3G. But look, so this 3-3G, if you do it correctly, to my knowledge, takes 4 frames. Why does this matter? Because at -4, you end up at -9. If you do this, you do 3-3G, you end up at -9, right? Throws are 10 frames in this game, and they're homing. And you saw with Lau, when I was showing the sidestep thing, if you do 6PP, you -1, and they try and step and they do ECDC or whatever, assuming that the stance is coming, because they pretty much have to make that decision right then and there. Assuming the stance is coming and they do that counterplay, the throw is going to catch them every time. And they can break the throw, but they're going to get caught because they're vulnerable for a minimum of 12 frames, right? So that's just how that works. They're vulnerable for a minimum of 12 frames. And most 5Ps in this game are 12 frame. There are some that are 11 frame, but most are 12 frames. So it's not really viable if, for example, somebody was doing ECDC or whatever, and you say, okay, well, I want to do this 11 frame to try and hit them. Well, that's probably not going to work because it's not a homing move. It's not a full circular like a throw is. So you would basically be throwing up that opportunity, right? So look, but there's the thing. So with this fuzzy system though, right? If I'm -6 or worse, I don't have the frames to crouch, because remember, the crouch dash takes 4 frames to become active pretty much. To my knowledge, it takes 4 frames. So that's why at -5, you can still fuzzy. You can crouch dash fuzzy and you won't have that issue. Now, Wolf is a character. He has 2 9-frame throws. So he can mix you up if you try and fuzzy at -5, but he's the only exception to this, right? And that's something they added in Revo. But essentially, the devs intentionally designed all these defensive mechanics as points of rigidity, so when they balance the game or they make decisions, they do all these other things, the work is already done for them. They can understand the confines of it easily because the stuff is very consistent. And how do you beat this fuzzy situation that I'm talking about, right? How do you beat this? Now you probably gonna like, oh, well, how would I beat this? I'm gonna show you. Now look, this is how we beat this. They do 6-6P, right? Now look, if I try and throw them immediately, now if I delay my throw, I catch them, or I can do this guard break. I can also, so if I do this, that's not gonna work. What can I do though? I can do a low. So I can do like a good low, because they're gonna be standing. So that's an option that I have. I can also put a plus frame on them if I don't want to deal with that situation. So I can do that. But the two main answers that everyone has to deal with a fuzzy, and they're going to be different levels of effectiveness, is they can do delayed throw, or they can do a low. But some characters have specialty things. So for example, Lao and Akira, they're two characters that would like to deal with this with a guard break. But as you can see, like if I just do this all day, this will always be evaded. Even if I'm turned away from them. But as you can see, if he's evading down that way, this is going to hit him. But he can do evade dash cancel to deal with this, because as you can see, the first hit of this is 17 frames, so he's out of the 12 frame window. But essentially, these three mechanics is some of the most important mechanics in this entire game as far as a defensive standpoint. And you notice that they all have very rigid restrictions on them that players play around, right? Players play around them. My opponent does a linear move. If my opponent does a linear move that's +5 on block in this game, I know that the step is always going to cover that. I don't have to worry about, I know that the step is always going to work, right? If my opponent is autopiloting certain decisions, which is a big part of this game, is punishing what you notice your opponent doing. This is a very observational game, especially compared to Tekken, where a lot of the defense after a certain point is very passive, right? This is a very observational game. Because even the throw break system, with there's a technique called LTE. You can hold a break for however amount of time, and if you're correct on that break, it'll always get broken. That's very consistent, but if you're wrong on the break, you take the damage. So somebody is next to you though. But let's say somebody is next to you, right? So somebody is next to you and you're not fuzzying or whatever. You know for a fact that this is a mix-up or what have you. You know, just because the way that it works, you're incentivized to press a button if somebody tries to throw you. Because as long as you're within the attack startup, the throw, like, you know, the attack startup is active, the throw can't touch you pretty much, right? But because throws is the fastest and they the main mix of the game, that's just something that you're going to have to get used to. That's something you're going to have to deal with. But I'll tell you one thing. If I sit here and I just do jab all day, or I sit here and I just keep doing 6Ps and you evade the 6P, it's getting evaded. I have to do something that goes to that side, or I have to delay my button to try and deal with it. But you know what's crazy? Even if you delay your button, so say I do this, this will only counter hit the side that it tracks to. Even if you delay the button, because it counter hits people for stepping to that side, but it only counter hits the side that they track to. But even with this, so like this stuff is always going to get evaded as long as it's not the side that it tracks to, right? And as you can see, like, that was a full string, but because there was no button press, it was just evades. It's going to work every time. This game is built on consistency. The consistency allows them to fundamentally design things well in a way that Tekken does not have access to, because Tekken is basically based on being inconsistent. So to recap really quickly, right? The sidestep is completely consistent. The sidestep is binary. If you evade it correctly, it's the right time and it's going to work every time. In exchange, there's more restrictions on the sidestep, right? You go to the backdash. If you understand the situation, backdash is extremely powerful, but backdash is not necessarily a general response to everything in the game. You can play this game without backdashing too much. Like you want to backdash, but there are a lot of other options available to you due to the rigidity of the system. Then you had a fuzzy guard. Well, we already covered. If you continue to fuzzy guard and you fuzzy every time, all they have to do is delay a throw. If they delay a throw, it covers you sidestepping and fuzzying. Same thing with the guard break. The guard break, like, guard breaks lose the step, but if I just see you autopilot and fuzzy, I can just do my guard break. I do my guard break, and now it's a risk to you blocking. And the other thing with guard break is that there are some situations, they're very rare, but you might want to do a guard break when you are in the taku. If you're like trying to, like, let's say that you're playing against somebody and they keep doing stuff like this button. This button is -15 on block, or they keep doing something like this. Like this button is like -18 or something, right? They keep doing something like that. Maybe your opponent, for some reason, you see that they keep trying to guard it instead of trying to counter hit you. If you see that, you could do a guard break in the Taku and then punish them for blocking, and they'll also beat their throw attempt. Now, it won't give you good frames, but I'm just using that as an example. But at the end of the day, the rigidity of the system creates freedom, but it also creates consistency, because you're free to handle things in a variety of ways, but you know that if you do the correct counterplay is going to work. It creates an environment where if something doesn't work, like basically every time, it's going to be your fault, right? I want to show you like why Tekken needs to have very good movement, because the movement in current Tekken is far too weak to enable the way that this game works. Cause I feel like this would be easier. Let me pick Fang and I'm gonna pick Lee. Let's start with these two characters just so I can show you, because they show like one of the biggest issues with this game compared to old Tekkens. And I can boot up an old Tekken if need be and show the difference. I can boot up T7 because T7 is a bad Tekken game, but it's one of the starts of this stuff besides T6. So let me do this, right? So look. So I'm gonna do this really quickly. Let's start here. Let's look at the situation. Now, remember what I was talking about with the rigidity and all them other things, right? So look, you cannot feasibly backdash this situation because of how weak the backdash is. If anything touches you in Tekken 8, then you cannot feasibly like deal with this situation. So we already have an issue. So this is already an issue that was shown to be completely different to VF, because the VF and the backdash in Virtual Fighter is a tool. In Tekken, because Tekken is not designed with the same level of rigidity, because Tekken is not designed with the same level of consistency, the system mechanics have to bear the brunt of the game design instead of the game being designed around the system mechanics. So let me give you another example. So let's look at this situation right here. Now look. Now, this is a move they added to Lee in T8. Now can I sidewalk this? Now if I do this, then look. Now I can step block, but I cannot backdash. Wait, let me turn this off really quick. So look. Do you see this? I can't sidewalk it. I can step duck it. But look, I can't backdash this either. It's extremely difficult to backdash this. Look at this. It's extremely difficult to backdash this. And now, but you see, I could, if they're just doing this, I could just backdash. But look, I could just backdash in the duck. Hey, look. Now, one of the problems you might notice is that this is a 15 frame. Now, let's turn this off again. So this is a 15 frame option. So look, the first hit of this is 15 frames. If you know how Tekken works, you know that generally a fuzzyable gap is 3 frames. You would passively want the KBD with whatever gap, depending on what you see the opponent doing, to deal with that type of situation. Now let's look at this though. So this is 21 frames. You could technically reverse fuzzy against this if these are the two options you see them doing. So you could technically do this and then do that. And if you don't get touched by anything, then you can actually make it out. But this is the issue. Now, what happens if I do this? So we have this move from Lee, right? So look, that hits me. That hits me. Now let's do this. Now, where's the consistency? It's only consistent if I do step in the duck. And even then the move is minus 15. But look, this is a 16 frame move. There's a 16 frame move. So look. Now, I have to reverse fuzzy 3 different moves to have an attempt to deal with this. Now look, now here's the issue. This is the 21 frame move, right? So look. So that's 14. Now, how do I reverse fuzzy this? You see that I can step it, because I'm going to Lee's weak side. I can step it on the mid, and I can cover all these options. But we're already at a point where the requirement on the player is ridiculous. Now look, now here's the other issue. Now watch this. Now, what happens if I do this? So, let's say I can reverse fuzzy all these different options. And it's very difficult. Like, I'm not gonna lie to you, it's very difficult. It isn't easy. So, I do this. Now, because it lacks consistency, I have the ability to, like, reverse fuzzy all these options. But the down forward 1, as you can see, now look at this. Let me just turn all these off. The down forward 1 tracks to this side, but it also tracks to the other side. Look at this. Now you might be saying, oh, well, you know, you can just back that shit. No, I can't. That is not an option I have. I don't have the ability to back that shit consistently at all. And I also can't stop it. So if a lead player wanted to, they would have the ability to completely lock me down in most cases by simply pressing this one jab until I get out. And then you have a situation like this where this is what ends up happening. So let me just record that sequence right there and let me show you something. So look. So the way that you beat this hitman stance is you do sidestep right duck, and then if they do things on immediate timing, the entire stance gets cooked, right? So that's just what it is. But look at this. Do you see how the backdash is inconsistent? The backdash is inconsistent. That's a homing move. But we also know that the step is inconsistent. And we know that we cannot step this. So we end up in a situation like, for example, if I was to do this. Look at this. So realistically, I have zero consistency to deal with this situation. This is the primary difference that I've noticed from playing Virtua Fighter coming from Tekken. Tekken, even historically, is not a game built on consistency. It is not a game that's built on consistency, because the goal of the dev team in a Tekken game is to give you the freedom to do a bunch of different options. But look, here's the thing. If I was to boot up Tekken 6 and I do one jab and the Fang down back 3, and I might boot up Tekken 6 just to show that what I'm talking about is, you know, like the truth. You can step this in Tekken 6 on a lot of the roster. You can step that situation, and it also doesn't have a counter hit property, but that's a different issue with the game design of like overloaded properties, but it also doesn't have a counter hit property. But look, so already already Tekken has failed on 2 of the 3 points that I mentioned about the dev team designing the game in a manner that's consistent and the game being designed in accordance with the game mechanics rather than the game mechanics bearing the brunt of the game design. Because those are 2 different things. But let's go to another character, right? Now, there's a character that nobody likes to play against in T8, and there are a bunch of delusional Lydia players that swear this character is okay, and there's some of them that even claim, which I saw on Twitter that was just an erroneous claim that I will disprove in this video actually because I found it so ridiculous. But they said that Lydia FF2 and T7 was more oppressive than it is in T8. Well, let's look at something. So before this season of T8, this button, let me just do this. Well, I'm gonna just record this, right? So before this season of T8, this button used to knock down, and the Lydia player would get like they would get this pretty much. This was the follow-up, so it was like 40 damage. Now let's look at this really quickly, and you tell me the issue with this. Let's look at the issue. So 45 damage, you get heat engaged, and they just have to deal with it. Okay, I mean that's just how the game works, right? But let me just record some more of these really quickly. So because no amount of Lydia player copium is going to disprove the issue with this. So we have a high homing move, right? A mid homing move, a -10 mid, and we have a plus frame mid, and we also, if I record it, what is the input for it? Oh yeah, we have this low. Now this low isn't that good, but I had to remember the input. So we have this stance right here, right? Now let's look at this. So this is +5 on block, right? So this is a very difficult situation to navigate because we sit here, we do this, and this low is not good, but I just added it just to have it there. But this is just the layer 1. So before this season, what people will tell you to do is, oh, just dick jab it. But if I dick jab it, I'm now subject to taking that much damage and heat engage. So, and if that hits me for some reason, I end up -18. So we have a situation with a character. Now look at this. This is the issue though. So it has infinite range. You can stop it. You can stop it. But this is the issue. And this is one of the biggest issues with T8. What if I do this? What if I do this? Now, if we turn all these off, and I'm not saying there isn't counterplay. I'm just saying, what if I do this? So look. Oh, well, it realigns. It realigns. Now, it's not going to be free realignment every time. But one of the things with T8 that they did was you can now hold the forward inputs on basically everything. So we also have this high while running move, right? And this is one of the issues. So look. Look at this. Now, in the past, you would have had to like manually do this, and this creates a situation where the player like wants to sidewalk. But even if you sidewalk, and this is not a question of the move being steppable or not. This is just showing that the timing can be made overwhelmingly ambiguous without much effort on the player's part. And keep in mind that you also have this mid that you can do where you can also delay the forward inputs, right? So look, that might not seem like much of an issue, like on its own, but I'm trying to, what is the move? So, but here's the thing. She has this QCF move right here, right? This QCF4 that goes in the stance. And as you can see, it's plus 17 or what have you, right? But we have all these different stance options. And keep in mind, we can also just do this. So if we do this right here on Lydia, it will directly punish them for not trying to press into the thing. Remember how I showed the loud situation where if you go in the stance, they can ECDC basically your entire mix-up unless you delay it? Right? Remember how I showed that? Well, when you fight this character, let me just start recording these. When you fight this character, not that these are good options. I'm just showing that the options is this pretty much. I'm just gonna put this on random. So that's minus 10. We have that. That's minus 6. But look. So what? You have this right here. Now, you could actually, if you see them do that, you know, you do your side step. But the issue is they get this plus 5. And you could react to that, like that stance transition, right? But they get this plus 5, and the entire game that you're playing, regardless of anything else, you're sitting here guessing on these different timings and shit, and they're just getting it off of the fact. So like you know, you would get your punish or whatever, but they're getting to do all this just off the fact that you blocked this move that along with the you know, the other options that she has, along with those options, you block this move, so now you just have to sit here and guess at minus 5. And the entire game, and granted, I'll be honest, for the Lydia players that want to sit here and be contrarian and pretend that this character isn't garbage game design, which I've already proven is trash game design just off the VF like moments alone when you compare it to how they design stuff there versus how they design stuff here. But the crux of the issue with T8, and there's one last thing that I want to show before I forget, because this is just classical Mishima counterplay stuff. That is the crux of the thing, and this is why I mentioned the fuzzy system. So you get forced to fuzzy in T8 because fuzzying is like your base defense attacking game. But let's look at this. So you do this situation, you add this plus frame now, which is 20 frame. So you do this, and you see this is 15 frames. So you can get out of the way of some of this, right? But this is 16. So that's 19 frame before the thing. And then this up forward 4 is going to be counting the crouch dash. The up forward 4 is going to be because it's 18 normally, it's going to be 21, right? And you had a sweep, so the sweep is going to be 19. So all these options hit in the same few basic number of frames. And The gaps are pretty much too small to fuzzy under normal circumstances. But then, so you have that as the first problem. But then, because of the way that step is weakened in this game, right? It isn't necessarily feasible to step on the timing on a lot of these characters consistently because stuff like that happens. So you see how the back 1+2 pretty much tracks me right there. And then you have this. So the devs, whether intentional or not, cause I don't think it's intentional. I think that they just don't know what frames to put moves at to make them fine and balanced or whatever compared to the VF team. But the devs essentially have created situations where you just have to hold stuff that you would never have to hold previously because the game lacks consistency. And it's not necessarily a bad thing that the game lacks consistency because it's an integral part of the game. But when the backdash can help you and the sidestep can help you, then the game just isn't going to function. And that's pretty much the main reason why the only way to fix the game is movement, because like half of this stuff you are not going to be able to move around it in the first place. Like, even though that's a short range attack, I have to make my decision. I have to step very specifically to literally deal with anything. I have to step. That's why a lot of people default to sidewalk in this game, as they did in T7 as well, because you don't really have much of a choice in the matter. But almost everything is going to hit in a similar number of frames. So you end up in a situation. So that's really the reason I brought up the third point with the fuzzying system in VF, because the way that people deal with someone fuzzy guarding well in this game is emergent instead of being something that the devs considered. But now the devs are creating stuff like COD CD1+2 that put plus frames on top of you for fuzzying correctly, depending on the timings that you're responding to or the moves that they're pressing. So that's really all it is with the fuzzying example. I want to just record this. Let me just do this. Let me see. So we have this. So you can actually backdash this. Yours is -2. And can you stop it? You can't stop it. So if for some reason this happens, then you know you can actually get out of there. But as far as 1+2 and the Hitman, I mean, no, you have way more restrictions on top of you than you had before. And even then, as you know, you can't get out of is. So even if I do this, I just have to hold that. You can go check the other games, see if that's the same. But the thing that's interesting about this is you basically gonna get tracked somehow, unless you sidewalk. But sidewalking has its own issue. You sidestep, you gotta block it. You can go to the right. You sidewalk it, you don't have to. But yeah, now you have that. Let me just boot up T7 and show you how that Lee situation will work in that game. And he doesn't have back 3-3, by the way. So the character was different in that regard. But even T7 that has shitty sidestep, the situation is very different. So I'm gonna go on T7 and I'm gonna go on T6 and show you the Fang thing after this, just to show you. And we could call it a wrap there, because there's a reason why Tekken is not a functional experience right now. Welcome to the king of and this tournament. It's not that hard to demonstrate it. So let me pick Fang, you know, for consistency. Let me pick Lee. Violet. Well, I mean Violet in this case, but let me pick, you know, Lee/Violet. And I'll just show you the difference, even though this game has its own issues. Like, even though they started putting turbo super boosted buttons in the game, I'll show you. We have Lee right here, right? So with this tip range or whatever, so you had the same situation happening right here, right? But look, I can actually get out of range of this. I can actually get out of range of both of them, in fact. Even with this, so you may have some problems getting out of the way of certain things that this character does, right? But it is actually feasible, depending on the situation that you find yourself in, to get out of there. And actually, let me record this as well. So, because this is something that I didn't record right there. Let me just put the frequencies down. Yeah, so if I sit here and do this. Now, so with this right here, and I can still do that. And by the way, this is minus 26 in this game. This is not like safe the way it was in, as you saw it was in T8. But so I get way higher reward, right? But even still, I have enough time to dash up here and do this, right? And even with this, like I could also do something like this, because it's gonna be harder for them to keep me in range like that. But like, as you can see, you can actually get out of the way of things in this game way easier. And there's some people that's like, oh, well, y'all just want T7 back. I don't want T7 back. Talking about some, oh, well, you could just backdash out of everything and you didn't have to actually play defense. That is literally like the worst understanding of this game. This game was bad because what you were supposed to do was, because things were so volatile, you basically had to just go out there and just throw like some big ass counter hits and stuff, right? But you can see with Lee right here that that I can realistically get out of this situation. Now, I'm not even playing character with one of the best backdashes. Like, that whiffs in this game. But you can see right there. So you can see that this consistently whiffs in this game. But my point is mostly that, like, and this game was basically cooked for like the inconsistency of it and for having a weak sidestep and stuff. But let me get on Tekken 6. You see this? So if they wanted to hit you in this game, they had to actually hit you. Like, they had to actually get in space to hit you. They couldn't just do something like this. So they had to actually get in space to hit you. And some people be like, oh, well, that's just because, like, the movement was too strong. The movement wasn't too strong. This is what's required for Tekken to be a functional experience. Because, again, as I showed with Virtua Fighter, when it comes to that type of stuff, I showed with VF that when it comes to this type of stuff with VF, right? And even if I do this, but like, as you can see, it's very like restrictive on hitting somebody versus T8 where people have bullet magnetism on top of you. This one right here, it's easier to show if you can but not only could you backdash it, you could also sidestep it. It's hard to step, but it is an option. But you can see how sidewalked it right there. It's hard to step because I'm in like training, but you can see sidewalking it is consistent to the left side. Fang's weak side is the left. As you can see right there, I stepped it. So as you can see, I can get out of the way of this. I can also just now sidewalk this. So I can sidewalk it. It'll hit me going the other way. But I can sidewalk it to the right. Now, as you can see though, as you can see, you can't just go like, oh well, I'ma just do whatever bullshit I want to do at the moment and then just go from there. Right? That's not an option that you have. But if I go to Fang, right?
Get ready for the next.
Because you saw it was steppable in T6. That hits. It's hard step in this game, right? Now you see that basically you can't move out of that, right? But look. Now, the thing with this character is that the reason he used to have this move is because his actual close range game is not that good. So, if I do this, I mean, not his close range game, his long range game. But if I do this, right? So look, record a few of these. So he has these, right? But he's a very short range character. So he has, and this button is still minus 15. And as you can see, you can still make that button whip. That's why he has back 4. But if you're over here, back 4 can't hit you. It's very hard for him to hit you unless he's continually dashing forward. And it's minus 15, remember? So, and it's +2 with pushback. So he had to get you to the wall. If he gets you to the wall, great character. If he doesn't get you to the wall, then he's kind of ass. Cause look at this. And keep in mind the forward dash, like distance in these old games, is still longer than the back dash distance. Just that the back dash allows you to actually move. So because of the way that this worked though, the game not being designed completely from the stand up, from the ground up as a consistent experience, like where the game is rigid, the movement makes up for the game itself, like, you know, having XYZ moves in it. But Tekken has always, like from the very beginning of the game being taken competitively seriously, it has always been a game where the game design itself bears a lot of the responsibility. I just want to get back on here really quick and just disprove the idea that Lydia FF2 was more oppressive in T7 than it is in T8, because that's just unfounded bullshit quote by a Lydia player that a lot of people see on Twitter, that just bullshit and saying that this button was more oppressive. I can disprove that in 5 seconds. The claim is that this button is more oppressive in T7 than it is in T8. Wait a minute, but I thought it was more oppressive. What do you mean if they block, you can't do your sweep? Maybe if they were referring to Lydia before patch, but if you do this FF2 and they block it, you are not in range to do your sweep follow-up. There you go. Problem solved. It's a lie. It's literally not true. And this button only transitions on hit. So it is by definition not more oppressive. That is just not true. But yeah, like the issue with Tekken, current Tekken, and the only way to solve it is the buff movement. There's no matter what changes they make individually to moves, buff and movement is the only thing that can save the series. It's the only thing, because buff and movement alone is not going to actually do anything to solve the issue. But that's all I can really say about that. So yeah, I hope this was interesting for anybody that watched it. But that's gonna be it for me, I think. So yeah, peace.